This is the web transcription service of the Royal Canadian Military Institute. On February 29th, an RCMI speakers dinner featured a very special guest of honor, Mr. Jeff MacLeod, General Manager of Colt Canada, who described to us the future of military small arms. At the end of his address, on behalf of Colt Canada, Mr. MacLeod made a very special donation to the RCMI Museum. Jeff MacLeod.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to have to excuse me. I've got this cold flu thing that's going around, and if my voice gives out on me, well, you'll understand why. First of all, I'd like to certify thanks to the Institute, Colonel Taylor, and the Manager of the head table for inviting me here tonight. It's a great honor, and you have such a wonderful facility here. I haven't had the chance to be here, but from what I've seen, it looks great. So, my talk tonight is going to be on the future of small arms in the Canadian Forces. I understand there's a few members of the Pistol Club here tonight. Bad news is I really hadn't incorporated anything into my presentation about pistols because we really don't do a lot on pistols, but we are working on some things which I will share with you. Up front, I'll have to state that any opinions expressed this evening are purely my own and may not necessarily reflect those of Colt Canada.
Good joke.
I think before we can get to where we're going, we have to understand where we came from. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a very quick introduction to Colt Canada, and we'll look at it from the time when we converted from Canadian Arsenals, a Crown-owned corporation, to a privately owned organization in 1976. The Long Branch facility, which was owned by the Canadian government, was a facility that was designed to support a war effort. It was too big, too unwieldy, and cost too much money to run. So somebody in government decided it'd probably be a good idea if they outsourced this capability. So in the 74-75 time frame, they put out a tender to privatize the small arms capability in the Canadian Forces. At that point in time, a small Canadian company that you may have heard of, Magna, actually won the competition and subsequently established Dymaco in 1976. The building you see in the middle of the picture is almost exactly as the building was in 1976, and if you look at the building today, it looks almost exactly the same. At the same time as they were privatizing the small arms capability, there was an order in council passed which established something called the Munition Supply Program, which guaranteed, or which was to guarantee strategic sources of supply in Canada of the various commodities. One of those commodities being small arms and the capability to manufacture small arms. So that policy, or the Munition Supply Program, gave the Department of National Defense the ability to sole source contracts to Dymaco at the time with no issues from Public Works and Government Services Canada. Now that agreement has changed over the years, but it's still in place. We are still, as has been mentioned, the Centre of Excellence for Small Arms for Canada. We still are part of the Munition Supply Program, and we still enjoy sole source status with the Canadian government. There's some details. The only real important one for this discussion is in 1983, the Crown acquired a license to produce the M16 family of weapons from Colt in Hartford. They named Dymaco as the manufacturer of those weapons. Incidentally enough, in 2005 we were actually acquired by Colt, and we changed our name at that time to Colt Canada. And in 2006, Colt Canada was actually given our own license by Colt to manufacture the weapons, because prior to that we actually produced for the export market under the Canadian license. So all our exports were done through the Canadian Commercial Corporation. So let's get into a little bit of history. Where did we come from? Looking out over the audience, I know there's some folks out there who are old enough to have enjoyed the pleasure of the FNC-1. And I use that term fairly lightly. I do as well remember coming back from the range feeling like I've just gone through a boxing match with a heavyweight, because I never ever found an FN with a long butt on it. We never ever got to choose the weapon you fired, and I was always one of those lucky guys who got a sight picture. You actually ended up getting your face pounded. So I was not a big fan of the C1 to start with. However, excellent weapon, a superb weapon. But at the time that we're talking about here in 1976 to 1984, it was getting long in the tooth, and it was heavy and big and awkward. The Sterling SMG, which was the other kind of standard weapon at the time, was fun. It wasn't highly effective, and it wasn't very reliable in that sometimes when you pull the trigger, it just liked to keep firing, which is never a good thing. We try and avoid that. So it was simply worn out and needed to be replaced. Now, the next slide will probably cause some controversy, but when we talk about weapons, you got to talk, well, oops, out of sequence. Oops. Here we go. So, no weapon discussion is complete without looking at the ammo. So just looking at the pictures here, you can see a couple of things that happen when you go to the 5.56 ammo. First of all, it's much smaller. It reduces the weight on the weapon. The weapon itself can be smaller, and your logistics tail can be smaller as well because of the lighter weight. The problem when they did this, though, is they didn't get rid of the 7.62. They kept the 7.62. So you've now got two calibers, where before you really only had the one. So that's not necessarily a good thing. In the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, Canada was doing a lot of trials for NATO on the ammunition. When they were doing those trials, they got a chance to sample a lot of weapons that are out there. And through their trials, they found that the M16 family was pretty close to what they were looking for a new family of weapons. So they arranged for a license from Colt and delivered a technical data package to Canada, or to Dymaco at the time, and said, build this. And we started off in 1983 to build the C7 and the C8 carbines. The C7, as you can see, a couple pounds lighter, a little bit shorter, essentially the same effective range as the C7, or C1, sorry. However, a lot of people will debate that. The C8 carbine, obviously a little lighter and a lot better range than the Sterling submachine gun. That's where we started. In 1983, Dymaco was assembling kits, basically. We're manufacturing barrels and assembling the rifles from parts supplied by Colt. By 1986, we were completing, building the entire critical parts of the weapon in-house in Kitchener, and which we still do to this day. So with the Small Arms Replacement Project, we delivered some 100,000 C7s and about 10,000 C8 carbines. I'm going to get myself out of sequence here again. There was some 300 engineering changes required on the rifle and carbines to get them to actually be producible using modern techniques. the TDP that we received was basically a World War II era design. It wasn't designed to be made on CNC machines, computer numerically controlled machines. So there was a lot of changes. None of these changes were really material to the design, just in the manufacturing processes. The rifle itself worked very well, but to be honest, the carbines didn't. And the initial carbines that were delivered to Canada were quite a disappointment. By the time we had won the Dutch small arms replacement program, we had changed the chamber design in the carbine, and we no longer have any issues with the carbines. And that chamber design still carries on through every carbine we manufacture today. So, a little bit of evolution, starting with the C7 to the C7A1 with the Weaver rail and the C79 sight, to what we currently have, which is the C7A2 and the C8A3. Now the C8A3 is a carbine with a 15.7 inch barrel, 15.7 you may ask why. Well, when we were doing a contract for the UK MOD, there was a requirement that they thought had to have two different weapons for it. They didn't think one rifle could meet both the compactness and the range capacity. We just started doing some math and figured out that if we made the rifle 15.7 inches long in the barrel length, it would meet the range requirements and still fit in the envelope required. And we still provide those systems to the Brits to this day. Now, I've got to figure out if I can go backwards on this thing. So, this is where we are now. The C7A2, the C8A3, arguably the most reliable, most effective 5.56 weapons on the market. And I will pat myself on the back on that one. However, these are fairly dated weapons as you look at it. I gave you a sneak peek unfortunately here at what we've got. But with the C7A2 and the C8, you see on the front sight there's a block that's put on there. That's to mount devices to. Particularly on the C7, that mounts devices very far forward on the gun and makes the gun very front heavy. However, it's better than duct taping them to the side of the gun. So we met the requirement. Did we like it? No, not necessarily, but you know, given the fact that Canada was looking for a $30 fix to a $200 problem, you know, you do what you can, right? The C8A3, as you see there, very much similar, except for the shorter barrel, and you see that now both weapons have the collapsible buttstock and the green furniture. So that is currently what Canada is using. Now I'll have to go forward again to say, what's the present state of the art? The two weapons you see here are an 11 inch and a 15.7 inch, what we call modular rail or multi-rail rifle. These were introduced this year at the SHOT Show in Las Vegas. These weapons are extremely light, extremely accurate. They have a free-floating barrel which takes an already accurate weapon and increases the accuracy even more. So it's a very, very accurate platform. The other thing we're working on, which is not illustrated in these diagrams, is an integral suppressor that is designed to run on the gun full-time, 100%. It will have 3 pieces. It can be taken apart and cleaned in the field. And it is practically impossible to put it on wrong. However, I'm sure somebody will figure out a way to do that.
Wait for it.
The near future of small arms, we can improve the accuracy of the weapons much more. They're as accurate as they're going to get. The ammo is about as good as it's going to get. So how are we going to increase the lethality of the systems? Well, we're going to increase the lethality of the systems by networking the rifles. So we are now embarking, and have been for several years, networking rifles into the combat net so that we can trade past target information from soldier to soldier, up and down the chain of command, and across all levels of command. This is something that the militaries across the world have been saying they want. We started delivering this capability in the prototype about 2 years ago. We are now actively working with the US Marine Corps, the British MOD, and Canada to take this technology to the next level. So what does it look like? Looks pretty similar, but this one does have the integral suppressor on it. The black rails you see on the tan are modular power and data rails. So there's no wires need to be run from various devices. They can all run off the central power pack, which is in on the back end. The sight you see there is called a digital video display. It has a through optic for power magnification, so that if all your electronics crap out, you still have a 4x scope with an etched reticle. The built-in digital video camera in it will allow us to not only tell you where a target is, it will allow us to take a picture of that target and send it to you as well. So this is a pretty interesting development, and we are going to have this delivered to the US Marine Corps hopefully later this fall, at the latest second quarter next year. It will all depend on the site. There's only 4 of them existing in the world right at the moment, and we're hoping to get our hands on sort of 6, 7, and 8 sort of thing to meet this requirement. One of the other things that we can do with this technology is, now that you have it, you know where your gun is in 3-dimensional space, you know where the target is on your map, I no longer actually have to see the target to engage it. With indirect fire weapons such as 40mm grenade launcher, mortars, that kind of thing, I can actually engage just from knowing where the target is on a map. I can get that information from various sources. I can get it from a UAV, I can get it from another observer, or I can enter the coordinates into the map myself. This is a technology that people didn't think would work, but it's actually relatively simple when you have some smart people working for you. So we'll continue with that capability as we go forward, as that is one that has a near-term requirement for almost every armed forces in the world, because of the ability to engage from positions of cover or to engage targets that you can't see. Now, where are we going after this? Well, got to talk about ammo again. There is a lot of controversy right now over the 5.56 ammo as to whether it meets the requirement or not. I'm personally not going to get involved in that debate. I build guns. Tell me what ammo you want to shoot, and I'll build a gun to shoot. But what I can tell you is that in the next true generation of small arms, while they are still going to chuck a bullet downrange, they are not going to be conventional in the terms we know it, with a brass case and a bullet sticking out the end of it. What you see in the illustration here on the ammo discussion are 2 cartridges, the 5.56 LSAT, or lightweight small arms technology ammo, and the 7.62 LSAT, lightweight small arms technology ammo. Colt Canada has, through a contract with DRDC, built a next generation type of weapon through the Soldier Integrated Precision Effects System program to fire this case telescopic ammunition. It saves a tremendous amount of weight, and if we go to an electronic primer, we'll solve a lot of technical issues with weapons in terms of firing the actual round. And once we have a full electronic capability, then I can do a whole bunch of other fun stuff with the gun. I can make you a much better shot. Everybody seems to do really well on the range, but as soon as you get people under pressure, their hit probability goes, frankly, down really, really quickly. With some of the technology we're talking about, we can probably bring that hit probability back up into the high 80s, if not 90% range. However, it does require handing over control of when that shot is taken to a computer. And that has some issues of its own. Technology is there, we're working on it. And as we said before, we want to do this at the same time as we're networking the weapons so that we can pass intelligence data, targets, and other information back and forth between the soldiers. In the time it takes now for somebody to look at their map, write down a grid reference, do a radio report, we've already done and engaged the target because we don't need to do that. We point the gun at the target, push a button, we get a picture, we get the range, we get the bearing, and we can send that information seamlessly through the system. And when it shows up on your display, it tells you where it is relative to where you are, what range it is, and it gives you a picture. So you can see what we're talking about. We had an example just 2 weeks ago in the UK where a section commander was watching his troops who were supposedly to be engaging figure 11 targets that were sort of hidden in a wood line. And one of his troops was saying, yeah, I'm on target, I'm on target. He looked at his display and said, no, you're not. Look at your device. Look at where it's telling you to point. He looked at his device, moved to where the device told him his target was, and then kind of goes, oh, yeah, see it now. So that's the kind of thing we can do now that you really couldn't do in the past. So what does this all mean for the weapons manufacturers? To me, it means that instead of treating a weapon as a standalone component of the soldier system, it's incumbent on the weapons manufacturers to integrate that weapon into the system. And in my opinion, it has to be the weapons manufacturer that does it. We have far better knowledge of the weapons, how it's used, and what the soldier is being asked to do with it than some electronics guru who's building a widget. You know, we've been there, done that. We know how it's used, we know what it's used for. So we are the ones who are best suited to integrate this weapon into the system. So this is what we've been involved in recently. We're doing basically everything you see on that slide, except for the ballistic protection we are working on. We have integrated our rifles into the LCSS system that's currently running in the light armored vehicles. So the light armored vehicles can see where we are, and we can see where the labs are on our displays. We designed a load carried system to provide additional backup for batteries. We've got heads-up displays. We've got a battlefield management system that's NATO compliant. We integrate sensors into the weapon so that you don't have to carry a separate GPS or laser or anything else. We can work with alternative power sources, knee brace generators, solar panels, anything else that you can think of. We can integrate UAVs, unattended ground sensors. Any type of sensor you want, we can integrate it into the system. We're communication system agnostic. If you don't have a communication system, we can provide you a communication system. The weapon you see there is a SIPES technology demonstrator. It's a bit of an ugly beast, but it wasn't designed to be pretty. It was designed to prove a concept. It did so. The weapon sensors, that's basically the digital video optic we talked about. Ballistic protection, I'm not going to get into that. And we talked a little bit about the platoon level or crew serve weapons, where we're going to be putting our system on things such as 60mm mortars for the Marines, 40mm grenade launchers for pretty much everybody. We're going to be doing trials this fall on 50 caliber machine guns, and as well the 40mm AGL. that Canada has, just to see what we can do. It may be kind of strange to think that little Colt Canada is doing all this stuff. We are, and we have been acknowledged by a lot of people to be probably the lead manufacturer in integrating this type of technology into small arms. We are, to put it bluntly, so far ahead of where the militaries are thinking that as we talk to them, they're ripping up their new requirements as they go and rewriting their requirements on the fly because they just can't keep up with the technology that's coming out these days. So what we're doing is we're trying to shape the new requirements as we go forward to try and guarantee ourselves a place at the table when they do decide that they need this kind of technology. And I think that's pretty special for 90 guys and 45,000 square feet factory in Kitchener and a 2,000 square foot office in Ottawa. So we're pushing the envelope. And just so you know, I'm not joshing you, I do have a short video that I can show you that illustrates some of these capabilities. It's really difficult to explain and it's quite difficult to actually show you in a video, especially in a video that we shot using basically cell phones. But I think you get the idea that we can do this. This is not rocket science. This is something we're already doing. We have delivered this capability to 3 of the major armed forces in the world, and we're continuing to work on it. So it's quite interesting. Now, I did say I was going to say something about pistols before I give up the floor here. With reference to pistols, Colt Canada doesn't actually make any pistols right at the moment. We do a lot of service on the current in-service Browning 1911s. However, those are rapidly approaching their end of their life. I mean, they're only 75, 80, 90 years old, some of them. So they've done yeoman service. One of the things we are doing right now is actually working on a pistol modification for Colt Hartford. Their Defender 1911 pistol in the low capacity version. They want us to modify it to take high capacity magazine for the export military market. So we got that task about 2 weeks ago, and we're working on it. We should have that done within about a month or 2. There is also the modular handgun system for the United States, which technically I'm not working on. However, Hartford is working on, and they will share that technology with us when they have something available. But that's the only news I have on the pistol front. So sorry about that, but that's all I've got. So with that, I'm open for questions if that's okay. Yes?
So, with the technology moving towards the way that you were displaying wireless Bluetooth, in my mind that works very well for a low-tech opponent. How does that work against an opponent that has the capability to break into your system wireless or Bluetooth and or do electronic warfare against those systems?
Well, the bottom line is that if they're using those kind of systems against you, that's why we say you still got your basic battle sight and your rifle. You still have to know how to shoot. You still have to know how to do your battle drills. But if they're shutting you down, they're also shutting themselves down. So they can only do that for a certain amount of time and certain periods of time.
What if they're co-opting those systems? How do you shoot at other targets?
We have the ability to use encrypted Bluetooth. We also do not have to use Bluetooth. We can connect directly into the combat net radio systems using Ethernet or other types of access to it. That if they can intercept that and feed stuff in, then they're better than we are.
Yes, another question. Yeah, Catherine?
I have 2 questions. If it's not classified, what was the modification that you were able to do with the carbines that had been such a problem and then all of a sudden it changed radically?
The carbines typically had a problem with extracting the round after it had been fired. We did simply is change the taper on the chamber so that the taper is just a little bit quicker, so that as you start moving, the cartridge becomes freer quicker. So it just extracts a whole lot better, and that solved all the problems.
My second question is, having watched that demonstration, it looks to me like actually we could use robotics in 2 ways. Another one is to keep people out of harm's way. If we are able to do this kind of technology, perhaps we can use robotics to recognize and fire rather than the human being.
Yeah, we're actually going down to the States next month. That'll be March. That'll be tomorrow. To talk with some large U.S. defense contractors about doing that on unmanned ground vehicles to give some autonomy to some weapon system on unmanned ground vehicles. Can't say a lot more about it right now, but we are looking at that aspect.
Yeah. Right side.
Jeff Cairns is my name. It's interesting to watch this and see how this is an evolution. 1994, I sat through a briefing from the infantry school down in Fort Benning, Georgia, as they were talking about the soldier of the 21st program, 21st century program. And what I'm seeing here in terms of personal networking and battle management systems is really nothing more than what was being precipitated then in 94. And this is an evolution, obviously, with technological changes we've had in 20 years to get Colt Canada to this state. True?
Yeah, excuse me, yeah, exactly true. However, the problem is that nobody's actually done it until we did it. And those same people at Fort Benning, Georgia, or not those same people, were privy to a display of this technology about this time last year. And the requirements people, the Picatinny Arsenals people, all the people that were there just basically couldn't believe that we were actually doing what now is in their Soldier 2025 sort of program.
Because what I remember in that program then, the soldier was, rather than being just sort of your average infantry crafts, was more like your long-range recce, and he would have a hardened platform on his back, for a better description, which was connected into his rifle, so that he could actually, through his scope, record and view, either send back real-time intel or send back as a microburst information, as well as a lot of things you're talking about, is GPS coordinates, or through the scope and ability to have real-time mathematics in kind of GPS format to negotiate with. What I'm seeing here is really, as I say, I think an evolution of a concept that was developed.
Yeah, one of the big things that's changed that actually allows us to actually work is the ability to store data. The mapping data required to do this takes up a tremendous amount of space. And in the past, you would have had to carry a massive hard drive around on your back to carry map data just for a small exercise area. Because when you're talking three-dimensional maps, it gets pretty dense in terms of the information required. And that's why working with the Marine Corps is so interesting, because they're looking at cloud technologies. So they'll have the battlefield cloud, basically, where they have all this information stored, and you only get what you need for that particular area. But yeah, it's an evolution. Technology at the time didn't advance as quickly as they thought it probably would. The technology is there now to do what they want to do.
Yeah, over here.
Hello, Major Slade Lurch from 3 CLI. I've used the C7, C8 series since 1988. I think it's a hell of a weapon. Thanks very much. Just with regards to the LSAT ammo, with the transition to that, how much of a general change in structure from the M16 platform would we expect to see? Generally the same thing? How much compatibility with the original series?
Because of the design of the ammo, the chamber design is totally different. So to put it bluntly, to put it into something that would resemble a C7 or a conventional rifle is not the best way to go. There are better ways to skin that cat. But it has been done in a weapon that does look similar to a C7. But the problem is the operating mechanism gets really nasty. So.
Are there any other questions? Yeah, Rod Morris?
Yeah. Well, what I see is technology that looks like it's more advanced than the United States technology, and of course, I guess most of us are aware of the challenges that your parent company had in the United States. Could you describe what the evolving relationship with your parent is in the United States from a corporate standpoint?
Yeah, how do I deal with that? Well, I mean, technically they've owned us since 2005. They are committed to the commercial market in the United States right now, which is a hot commodity. The military market in the United States is pretty quiet right at the moment. Budgets aren't there. There's nothing really happening. However, they do appreciate that as they go forward, if they don't have something to offer the military, they'll get left behind. And therefore, they have basically appointed Colt Canada as their R&D facility. So we get support from them to carry on with projects like this. However, they do have a program manager in the States to do the day-to-day liaison with the U.S. military offices. However, on certain programs, such as foreign comparative testing, that is a program that's directly between, say, the U.S. Marine Corps and Colt Canada. It's not through the parent company. But they are relying on us to bring them the next generation small arms to the table.
Yes, yeah.
I've got a question. When we look at the technology, the evolution of the hardware of the firearm, going from iron and springs and sears, I see the LSAT, which is a caseless cartridge ignited by electronic means. Do you see us moving away from actually the finger trigger and going to maybe an optical actuation of the actual cartridge? Is that being looked at? In other words, blink your eye, look here, look there, and
yeah, we're not looking at that level of detail of this kind of thing. Once you have the electronics to fire the weapon, then you can use pretty much any mode you want to fire the weapon. Essentially, the weapon becomes an IP address, and if you can address that, you can control the weapon. We actually had to ship guns from Kitchener to Ottawa because the guys in the lab were getting upset with the guys in Ottawa testing the firing mechanism, and the gun is going click, click, click because it's hooked into the wireless network at the factory, and the guys in Ottawa are tied into that same network, and they're actually troubleshooting the gun in the lab in Kitchener remotely. So if we can do that, then the recognition algorithms are already out there that we could do that. But that's a big training, and I think that would be a big hurdle. We're not quite up to the jet pilot standard yet for your average infantry, so we'll work on it. Yes?
Yeah, over here.
Hi, Tom. Long-time user, first-time caller, but really like your product. Got to use it this year at SHOT Show and see your integrated sword system. Wonderful platform. Are you noticing a change in the ballistic performance when you're using the integrated suppressor on your new system that you're presenting? So we used it with the attachable suppressor.
The actual addition of the suppressor doesn't change the performance of the weapon, because in this case we've designed the weapon from the get-go to work with it. Typically, if you do add a suppressor onto a weapon, there is a change in the ballistics. Not necessarily always bad, but it does change the point of impact usually. In this case, we've taken that into account in the design, so it's not something you really have to take into account.
Yeah, fellow just in the back. Yeah, just.
One of the slides you showed was an MRR package.
Yes.
The battery and the optic on top. Is there a weight penalty for that? And just the balance of the rifle?
That particular weapon system would actually be lighter than what they're actually carrying now with the accessories. That whole system the weapon itself is about half a pound lighter than a conventional M4 or C8 with a modular handguard system on it. The digital optic, because it has the capability to fuse a thermal camera into it, doesn't require a full thermal sight to go in front of it. It requires something about half the size of a Coke can that can be mounted anywhere on the rail system, and it fuses it electronically in the sight. Your GPS, your inertial nav, everything is built into the rifle, so you're taking that weight off the soldier. So all in all, you're saving about 3 to 4 pounds, and yes, we're putting the weight back where it belongs towards the center of gravity or back from the center of gravity. So you'll see that the battery is in the buttstock area if we put a battery on it, because we can actually run tethered to a soldier battery backpack through a tethering strap that runs through the sling, so that it's quick detachable as well, so he doesn't even know it's there.
I have one more question here, and then I'll go on to you. There we go.
I see it's getting to a position where you can actually point your weapon at somebody and someone else will pull the trigger for you. And I'm a little discomfited when we're actually talking about autonomous robotic weapon systems. I mean, the seventh and last is that we engage in warfare, but there's the recognition that warfare has to be a human act, and that there actually has to be some degree of emotional involvement with this. If we're getting to a stage where it's great that you can technically accomplish these things, but is anyone actually asking, for God's sakes, why?
We're actually asking why. We're not actually putting any systems even in test that take the human out of the loop. We're not there yet. The logic is not there to do that. So it has to be a physical human being somewhere pulling the trigger, whether it's physically on the gun or in a remote weapon station. There's still somebody has to physically arm the weapon, fire. We're not there yet.
There's just the gentleman over here. You got a question?
Not related to this evening's topic, but I'm just curious. Last year, I guess Bamako or now Colt Canada released the C7 and C8 version semi-automatic for the civilian market. Are you planning to do the same thing with the C7A2 style rifle?
The C7A2 was actually released last year. It was a C7A2, except it had black furniture. We didn't have any green in stock, so.
It would have the collapsible buttstock.
It had the collapsible buttstock and all that on it, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Gentleman over there.
Well, following up on what John's point was there, what I'm wondering about is because, what we're hearing about, what you're presenting about is long distance, can't see the target, perhaps optically. What is being developed with respect to, or are you looking at developing things with respect to close quarters work? In other words, something is, smaller, pistol-like, or even the redevelopment of the pistol integrating this type of technology to assist close quarters work.
The police forces we've actually shown this technology to are very interested in it, from the fact that they can know where all their people are when they're doing a room clearing or doing that kind of activity. From our own standpoint, with the current platform, the 5.56 platform, you can only make the barrels so short. At a certain point, at about 10 inches, they become really, really, really miserable to shoot. Even with a suppressor on them, they're not nice to shoot. So we've basically shown Canada an 11.5-inch barrel weapon with the integral suppressor, which doesn't add any length to the weapon, as a potential personal defense weapon. And they're actually going to try that in the not too distant future. But other than that, we're pushing the limits on the physics of the round.
Eric?
Jeff, I'm going to follow up on John's question as well and push it to the limit of what is probably permissible questioning. But in Afghanistan, we had a maximum of 800 guys deployable in the field. How do 800 guys with your technology stack up against, say, 8,000 with Kalashnikovs and RPG-7s?
Well, the first thing you got to realize is that those guys with the AK-47s and the RPGs are already using social media to do a lot of the stuff we're showing our customers. So they're passing target information through Facebook, through other social media sites. So they're already doing it. So what we're doing by the ability we have with this is to take the most recent intelligence data and pass it to the guys on the ground. Even in mid-mission, they can get it instantaneously. There's no sitting down and listening to a radio message and having to plot it on your map and do all that crap you usually have to do. It's instantaneous, it's there. So it's a force multiplier. So you're, 800 Canadians. I'm not going to say they're going to take on 8,000 bad guys and be successful, but we're giving them a whole lot better chance at doing that than they currently have.
This has been another in the ongoing series of podcasts brought to you as an educational service of the Royal Canadian Military Institute. You can keep abreast of our web offerings as well as our live events by visiting our website at www.rcmi.org. Once again, this is Eric Morse saying thank you for being with us and good night.